When I first started this off, I said that marriage is a socially constructed entity. And when we think about African Americans, or we think about the enslaved Africans during the periods of 1619 and 1863, when we think about that, their only example of relationships they have was from that of their slave owners and other slave owners, or white people in general. That's where enslaved Africans got their concepts and understanding of what it is to be in relationship. When we ask the question, if enslaved Africans learned about marriage and relationships through their slave masters, then why do we see them with some of the issues and the problems they have today with having children by multiple mothers or multiple fathers, not being married, not being committed, men leaving their children, all the narrative in which we hear when it comes to African American families or the African American community? You have to consider this, that they were socially constructed, socially engineered on how to behave. And it was from watching their slave masters who raped slave women, who had children with slave women and left those children to be bastards. They did not take care of their children. They did not care for their children that they had with their slave women. So these children grew up not having a real relationship with their father. They did not have a mother and father unit in place where they were able to see a healthy relationship. This is how these children were raised. They grew up, and these children became parents as well. So when we look at what is happening in many of the African American communities across the world, especially here in North America, we have to understand that these behaviors that we're seeing, many of them have been taught to them during the period of slavery. And even though descendants of slaves here in this day and age did not directly experience slavery, we have to understand the whole concept of intergenerational transmissions. We see this so clearly in the teachings of Monica McGoldrick, the creator or producer, developer of the genograms. I love using her work because she points out how pathologies are passed down throughout the generations, how belief systems are passed down throughout the generations. So if this is true for our families and our couples that we work with in this day and age, in the 21st century, then it's also true in the 1600s, in the 1700s, and in the 1800s. We have to always consider that the whole concept, the theory of social role modeling is so real. And these behaviors, these negative behaviors have been modeled for enslaved Africans. So when we talk about the relationships of African Americans or the relationship of enslaved Africans, there's a lot of relationship confusion that is going on. We got to consider the effects of breeding, causing enslaved African men to have sex with various slave women for the purpose of breeding, for the purpose of bringing children into the world to act as slaves, to repeat that whole cycle of slavery, is kind of sickening. And I have to ask myself, and I encourage you guys to ask the same, what did this do to the psyche of African Americans in this day and age and in the psyche of their ancestors? What effect did breeding have on the Black family unit? What effect did slave auctions have on the Black family unit? What message did it send to the descendants of slaves? What effect did raping slave women have on the Black community? What has it taught us about valuing women, valuing Black women in particular? These things have such damaging effects, and they just don't go away. Trauma just doesn't go away like that. Trauma can be passed on from generation to generation. And I'm going to be bold enough to say that this is what's actually happening within the African American community.